Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole and today I'm going to be sharing with you what I'm currently reading. So I'm a little bit sick right now, so please excuse me if my voice sounds a little strange or off. I'm not even sure I'm hearing correctly out of both my ears. So it's just going to be one of those days. But I did want to get this done because I'm actually feeling a little bit better. So hopefully, things are changing. Anyway, I'm just going to get straight into it because I don't know how long my voice is going to last. All right, I figure we'll just go ahead and start with the big white elephant in the room, I guess, or the book that's like always going to be on my TBR is what it feels like. And that would be The Tale of Genji. So I have been reading The Tale of Genji. This is now my third month and should be my last month. I'm making pretty decent progress. You can see this is about where I am right now. Sorry, it's a little blown out over here. And it's going really well. Genji, is I don't know. I don't even know if I'd say it's kind of a Bildungsroman because I feel like it's not just coming of age; it's like his whole life. So we start when Genji is born in this novel, and at the point that I'm at, he's in his mid to late 40s, I believe, and so he's gone through a lot of twists and turns in his life. He's been exiled at one point. He has numerous wives. He has some children, and you're kind of at the point of seeing like starting to wonder like what kind of legacy is he going to leave behind. Genji is actually a fairly easy to read in case you are thinking about picking this up. I do have the Dennis Washburn edition. Editions and translations can vary quite a bit, which I guess I should mention really quickly. The Tale of Genji, if you don't know, is about imperial court life in, I believe, 900 AD Japan. I think this book is a amazing look at a different culture, a different time period, and just sort of the history and making of Japan. It also has some beautiful poetry in here, some gorgeous descriptions of scenery. I think there's just a lot in this book to like. At this point in my read, I too, this is a reread for me, but I too am finding that I'm trying to remember how this all ends up wrapping up for Genji. Um, he's starting to have some trouble and problems in his household. Like one of his past relationships keeps coming back to haunt him, kind of literally, which I don't remember at all. And I think it's so fascinating how that comes up. But you get a great look at like just culturally how they lived at the time, especially in the court life. You get a look at the combination of religious beliefs they have because they're sort of a combo of Buddhist and Shinto practices happening in Japan. You can see how the Chinese culture has sort of influenced what's going on in Japan at this time. There's just a lot of things to appreciate about this book. I have to read about 30 pages a day because I had a couple of trips this month and there was no way I was bringing this in my suitcase. I tried once and didn't even end up touching it. So I'm at the point where I need to read about 30 pages of this every day to finish it by the end of the month. So that's The Tale of Genji. It is going well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to finishing it this month. Along with The Tale of Genji, I am still reading The Reader's Guide. This is still going really well. Again, I'd highly recommend this if you're reading The Tale of Genji, regardless of translation. He is going with the Sidon Striker and Wayland translation, I believe, is the one that he's using in this book. But his commentaries for the vast majority of this little book are really just summaries of what happens in the stories. So that applies no matter what translation you're using. The first 9 chapters, he kind of helps you with the process of identifying themes and that kind of thing that are in the book and pointing out what they look like. And then the remaining chapters of the book, he just does chapter summaries. And I find that really helpful because there's definitely times in the book where I'm like, wait, did I catch culturally what was going on or the significance of that? And when in doubt, I read the little chapter summary and go, oh, yep, okay, I got it. Or, oh, no, I didn't realize that was so important. So that is this, The Tale of Genji, A Reader's Guide by William Pewitt. And I'll hold it close so you can see his name. All of the books will be below in the description so you can have their full name and authors. In addition to The Tale of Genji and the Reader's Guide, I am also reading The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois. This is a nonfiction pick for me, and I am actually both reading this and listening to the audiobook. I always like having at least one audiobook available just so that if I get tired of reading with my eyes, I can continue listening, or if there's stuff that I just need to get done around the house or, run errands or whatever, that doesn't mean I can't be listening to a good book. And sometimes I prefer that than putting on music or the radio or that kind of thing. The audiobook for this is really good. I don't remember who the narrator of the audiobook is, but if I can find that information, I will put that down in the description. This book is a series of essays, some of which were written specifically for this book, and some which W.E.B. Du Bois had already published and got permission to sort of bind up in a book format. And he just discusses in this book all his thoughts about just the inner workings and lives and thoughts and greatness of Black Americans shortly after the time of the Civil War and Reconstruction. I'm finding this a really great read or listen, depending on which I'm doing. And there's just a lot of really intriguing thoughts. I think he does a really good job of highlighting and just breaking down some of the dilemmas that I think African Americans faced and still face, just in terms of trying to understand their place in the world and knowing truths about themselves that are not recognized by others, especially at the time that he's writing this book. Currently, I am at the point where I just finished the chapter on Booker T. Washington. It's not really about Booker T. Washington, but it's sort of a argument where he's opposing a lot of the teachings of Booker T. Washington. Basically, at the time that he at least wrote that essay, Booker T. Washington was sort of a more conservative voice in the African American community, and he was kind of arguing that, yeah, okay, we're done with the Civil War, people are free, that kind of thing. What African Americans really need to focus on now is like economic things. So it's important that we just get them working, either in the fields or we get them working in industrialization, so in factories, and they basically just need like vocational skills. And that's what's most important, because if they can get these vocational skills, they can start making money, and almost kind of a money makes the world go round, and that's all that's important. Booker T. Washington also kind of felt like, let's just take a slow progressive approach. Like everything doesn't need to be fixed right now. We can slowly work on all the problems that exist. W.E.B. Du Bois kind of in the chapter that I just finished goes through all the reasons why no, that's not okay. No, it's not going to work. He thinks it's just as important that African Americans be allowed to get higher education, as well as vocational jobs. It's not like he's against this idea of vocational work, but he's just like, we can do so much more than that, and we need to be allowed to start contributing in all spaces. So that's where I'm at in the book. It's going really well. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to listening to more, which is working out really well right now because I'm definitely feeling a little too sick to read. But it is nice to sit and listen to something so I can still use my brain. Along with W.E.B. Du Bois, I fortunately was able to, in the same month, using my TBR game, which would be rather random, is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. This is by Honore Jeffers. This book, I have to say, is really surprising me. It started out in a way that I wasn't sure that I was going to enjoy at the start of the book. I'd say probably the first quarter of the book goes back and forth between two sort of time periods. One is way back in the history of our protagonist, whose name is Eiley. And that's the part that's kind of told in this folklorish kind of fashion, which is really supposed to be the history of her family, the history of her people. Once you understand who's supposed to be telling the initial part of the story, the voice makes sense. And then the other time period that it talks about is, generations later. Because I guess I didn't say that the first time period is basically during the time where European colonists are starting to come to the U.S. And so it's actually from a Native American perspective, and just talks about like the different races that were here during that time period. And then the second part of, or the second time period that starts being discussed is, I guess it would be in the 80s and 90s. when Eiley is a young girl. So it starts when she's like a very young girl, I think 3. And at the point that I'm at now, she's in her late teens and she's just started college. The reason I said this book surprised me is, one, because the writing style, I didn't initially think I was going to like, but then once I figured it out, I started enjoying it. But also, I'm finding it actually a very easy read. This typically gets classed as literary fiction, which I sometimes don't enjoy the writing style of. So I was happy to see that this was a pretty straightforward writing style, that the engaging parts of this book weren't just playing around with writing form, and really have to do more with these multiple perspectives that you're kind of seeing, and just learning the history of what seems like is eventually going to be 2 families. There are a lot of characters in this book and a lot of names, and it jumps back and forth between them. And you do get a family tree at the front. I think, unfortunately, that the family tree was not broken out in a chart style. It's literally just a list of people in the family. And I find that really hard to wrap my mind around. So I have been tempted multiple times to actually remake these names into an actual family tree so I can better understand how the different people are related, because it is somewhat important to the book. Anyway, that's all I have to say about it at this point. I did take this. I did not take the physical book with me on a trip that I went on, but I was discussing it in a reading sprint that I was trying to figure out how to handle this, and I was reminded that I could take an ebook. So I did download this from my library on my Kindle, and I was able to take that on a trip with me. And this was actually a really good book to do that with, because it's easy to pick up and put down. There is an audiobook of this as well, but I really didn't want to listen to this on audio. Based on just how the beginning of the book was. I thought I'd be too confused. But I'm at a point now where I think I actually could, but I want to continue listening to the Soul of Black Folk, and I don't tend to do multiple audiobooks at a time. The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. This is going really well. I think I'm actually going to end up ranking this a lot higher than I thought. If you've put off reading this book or been turned off from reading this book because you feel like it's too long, give it a try. I think it's a very easy read. I think the pacing of it is really well done, and I'm a couple hundred pages in, about 250 pages in, and I don't feel like it's too long yet. Like, I feel like, nope, we have plenty that I still want to know and keep seeing and going, and so I think you would find that it's very well paced and move along, and you'd be surprised by how much of this book that you could get through. So that's The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. The next book that I've got here is a book that I'm reading for my family book club, and that would be Skipping Christmas by John Grisham. This cover of this book actually is very much related to what this story is about. This is just a fun little easy, short, Christmassy read for our family, so we'll probably finish this in a couple of weeks. The basic storyline behind this book is that there is a gentleman named Luther Crank. It's him, his wife Nora, and their daughter. At the beginning of the book, Luther's daughter goes off to South America to go and, I'll get to my issues with where she's going and what she's doing in a second. But she's going to do work and teach children how to read in Brazil, I think it is. And so him and his wife are finding themselves empty nesters, kind of sort of for the first time. He's feeling really overwhelmed. He's kind of got a, Scrooge, Grinch kind of attitude about Christmas that's coming up. And so he comes up with this idea, because he's an accountant, that if they skip Christmas, thus skipping Christmas, and don't do the decorations, don't buy the gifts, don't do any of that jazz, they don't need to because their daughter won't be home for Christmas, that they will save $3,000. They will save like $3,000, and they can go on a cruise for Christmas instead. And so they make that decision, and the story really starts going from there, with all the things that they start running into with their neighbors and all the issues that come up with them, that all the changes that they're going to have to make in their life just to skip Christmas. And so you can see from this picture that they live in this neighborhood. Everybody in their neighborhood decorates for Christmas. They have this whole thing where they all put snowmen on their house, and this is supposed to represent their house, where it's like, dark and no lights, and like I don't know why their inside lights aren't on, but you get it. And so it's just going to follow their attempts for skipping Christmas and how that goes, and it's just especially when I think of John Grisham, I think like action thriller. It's just a very like lighthearted, fun little Christmas book. I will say that for the most part, I'm enjoying it for that. I had a little bit of trouble getting into the book at the beginning because it's very, I'll be generous and say dated, especially in its view of people, other people. It tends to other people a lot. So there's a lot of references to, like, the main describing factor for how people look that he's coming across. They're usually described by their race, which I sometimes find odd and unnecessary, especially because it's irrelevant in terms of what he's doing. The daughter is going to visit, primitive people in South America because, she wanted to do something good. So that gets into my issue with missionaries and Peace Corps and all that jazz. But she wanted to do something good for herself this year. And so she's going to go and teach these primitive people how to read English, I would guess, based on how this book is going. And so there were just a whole bunch of like little things like that in the beginning of the book that I was like, really? I was happy to find that there were articles about where he acknowledges that like he grew up in the South and he has a lot of, sort of demons to conquer based on that, because he recognizes and has recognized over the course of his life that he grew up in a very, he specifically grew up in a very racist area. And so he's had to come to terms with that and that kind of thing. And I saw a few articles that were indicating that he's like really trying to move beyond that. This book was published in 2001. So a lot has changed since then. So I can appreciate that he has probably changed and grown as a writer as well. So that is Skipping Christmas. It is just a little fluff read. Finally, I almost forgot, I have finished one book so far this month, and I'm in the middle of all of those other ones. And the book that I finished already this month is The Door into Summer by Robert A. Heinlein. And this is a science fiction novel. The Door into Summer, this is for my friend book club pick. And I really enjoyed this book. Like, science fiction can be hit or miss for me, but this book, especially like based on like the cover, like I don't know about the cover of this, but I really recommend this book. This was a surprising read for me. I wasn't sure what it was going to be about, but it's about a guy named Dan Davis who, at the very beginning of the novel, is basically depressed. And the title of the book comes from this idea that he owns this cat who is like a great animal companion, who doesn't like to go out in the wintertime and, forces him to walk around to every exterior door in the house and open them. And he talks about how it's like the cat is looking for a door into summer. Like, maybe if you open this one, summer will be on the outside instead of winter and snow. And so at the beginning of the book, he talks about how he reaches a point in his life where he's finding himself trying to find a door into summer, which is just like maybe a little bit repetitively put, but in the book, but is also really beautifully told. And it is just such a fun, interesting, fast-paced, entertaining novel. That's a lot is jammed into a very short time. I think it leans on the side of science fiction that is less about the science. And as my friend who chose this book pointed out, more about the morality and implications to humans and how we interact with one another and technology and the effect of technology on our lives, and sort of the ethics that exist and that have to be considered in science. And so that does come up in a lot of subtle ways in this book. There is a bit of a like mystery and time travel and cryo freeze and some other funny, weird things that happen. But overall, I think this book has a lot to do with, I would say, intellectual property, actually, as well as patents, and just, whose work is whose and how do you use that, and how do we make sure that our ideas are best represented and stay ours, and where is the line crossed, and to what lengths do you have to go to protect that. But it's that and so much more. It really was a joy and a fun to read, even though there are these like deeper concepts going on in the background. That's it for today. My computer's going to cut me off because I only had 30 minutes to film and I'm at my limit. So I hope you enjoyed finding out about what I'm reading. I will try and do another update before the end of year wrap up. But if not, let me know if you've read any of these books and if you've enjoyed them. I'll see you next time. Bye.